Welcome to Beverly Unitarian Church. My name is Jennie Cottrill. I'm a worship associate. We welcome all people here, every color of the rainbow from every place on earth. Whatever your past or present is like, we invite you to walk into the future with us. Here we celebrate a diversity of beliefs, striving always to make space for more. Like other Unitarian Universalist congregations, we affirm 7 principles, which are not a doctrine or a dogma, but rather our shared values and moral guide. To learn more about these principles, please visit the website of our denomination, www.uua.org. Our minister is the Reverend David Schwartz. Today I am your service leader, and I will be joined by 4 storytellers, Amanda Price, Linda Peterson, Marina Jablonsky, and Merrick for our annual Myths, Legends, and Folktales service. If you've been around Beverly Unitarian in the past few years, you'll know that when it's the Myths, Legends, and Folktales Day, you walk into the sanctuary and it looks different. The chairs are all arranged in a circle with the chalice at the center, and I say, imagine you're sitting around a campfire. Well, in an online service, I can't put your chairs in a circle, but I can bring you the campfire. This is a service in which we evoke the spirit of people of ages past who used to tell stories around their fires at night. The stories that have been passed down for generations have an archetypal power. While we don't take them as literal truth, they nevertheless ring true. They convey universal human experiences. Sometimes they teach us lessons. Sometimes they give us a new way of looking at the world. Sometimes they just make us laugh because we've all been in a similar situation. This is supposed to be the point in the service where I introduce the musicians. Today, you are all musicians. While my husband, Josh Cottrill, and I will lead you in music, all of our songs will be simple a cappella chants and rounds that we hope will bring you in mind of a simpler day when entertainment was more participatory. So please do sing along. We especially welcome visitors and hope that you'll stay for the virtual coffee hour after the service on Zoom, using the link that will be shared in the chat. To learn more about our congregation, visit our website, www.beverlyunitarian.org. To be added to our church's email list, please send an email to beverlyunitarian@gmail.com. We look forward to the day when we will be able to meet you in person. Let us now join together in spirit and prepare our hearts and minds for worship. Our centering music this morning is a song called Loosen, Loosen Baby by Allie Halpert. We've heard it once before in church when David taught it to us, but it's still fairly new to most of us, so Josh and I would like to teach it to you again. It's a great song for letting go the cares of the world so that you can relax and be present for worship. It's a 2-part song, and so you can choose to sing along with me or with Josh. Josh will sing his part twice. Join in when you feel comfortable. I'll sing my part twice. Join in when you feel comfortable, and then we'll put both parts together and sing it through twice.
Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go.
Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain? Holy breath and holy name, will you ease this pain?
Loosen, loosen, baby, you don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go.
Please join me in reciting the words for lighting our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom, we strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. Now let us join together in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. My story today comes all the way from India. The Lump of Salt was retold for the book From Long Ago and Many Lands by Sophia Lyon Faz. She's someone you want to know. Sophia Lyon Faz was an author, teacher, and religious activist. She led a revolution in the Unitarian religious education. Her teaching and writing always focused on ways to help children develop their own ideas about religion and spirituality. By gifting me this book, Shar Lichtenfeld introduced me to Sophia Lyon Faz over 10 years ago when I began my journey as your religious education director. From Long Ago and Many Lands is a collection of folktales that illustrate and encompass the principles of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and it's a fan favorite. The Lump of Salt, a story from India. Svetkatu and his father went for a walk and sat down together on some rocks in a grove of fig trees. The father brought with him an empty pan, and hidden in a pocket of his gown, he carried a lump of salt. With the pan and the salt, he was ready to give his son yet another lesson. "Why did you bring that empty pan along, father?" "You will see, my son. I want you to carry it down to the river, fill it up with water, and then bring it back up here." Svetkatu did as his father asked. Pulling the lump of salt out of his pocket, the father said, "Take this lump of salt, Svetkatu, and place it in this pan of water." They both watched and waited for a while after Svetkatu dropped the salt into the pan. "Now, Svetkatu, I want that lump of salt back. Please pick it up and hand it to me." "But father, I don't see it anymore." "Put your mouth down into this end of the pan and taste the water," said the father. "Now, tell me, how does it taste there?" Svetkatu put his mouth down to the pan and tasted the water. "The water tastes salty." "My son, take a sip of the farther end of the pan now. How does it taste there?" "It is salty there too," explains Svetkatu. "Now, put your mouth into the middle of the pan and taste it. How is it there?" "Well, it is salty there too." "So you say it is salty, my son, and yet you say you cannot see any salt to give me back?" No, sir, I can see no salt at all. My son, even though your eyes do not help you see any salt, with your tongue you can taste the salt. And you have found that what was once just a small lump of salt is now in this side of the pan of water. It is also in the middle, and it is even at the farther end. It is everywhere in the water. Now, Svikatu, you should know that although your eyes do not help you to see God, there are other ways you may use to find out whether or not God is. God to many, like the salt, is everywhere, here, there, and far off. As the salt is hidden in the water, so is God hidden in all the world. God is spirit, as you yourself are spirit. And maybe God is hidden in you, my son. God is you, and you are a part of God. Svikatu was quiet for a long time. He was saying to himself over and over what his father said. Maybe God is everywhere, here, there, and far off. As the salt is hidden in the water, so is God hidden in you. God is you, and you are a part of God. Finally, Svikatu said, Father, please help me to understand even more. It shall be, my son, said the father. There is so much more to learn.
Good morning. My tale, The Legend of the Crane, comes from Japan, where the crane symbolizes good fortune, long life, and the granting of wishes. Once upon a time, there lived a sailmaker. Yasuko, for that was his name, lived high above the sea, and all his life he had looked out upon a marsh below, where hundreds of cranes gathered each summer and fall. He loved the sight of these stately white creatures. They reminded him of sails, and when he worked at his loom, weaving his fabric, he imagined he was weaving crane feathers, sleek and strong and beautiful. One evening during the season of storms, Yasuko heard something crash against his door. When he opened it, he was startled to see a crane laying upon his doorstep, stunned and near death. He carried the poor creature inside, lay it by the fire, and carefully spread its crumpled wings out to dry. He tended to his wounded crane for many days, and when at last the bird's strength returned, he took it outside and set it free. It quickly flew away. Yasuko was surprised by how lonely he felt when the crane was gone. It was then he realized that he wished for a wife. And now when he looked out at the cranes gathered together, he envied them for their companionship. He began to dream of a day when he too would have a companion. Time passed, and then one night a beautiful young woman appeared at his door. She stood shivering in the evening wind, for her clothes were made of the thinnest material like the fabric Yasuko worked at his loom. "Could you let me inside?" the woman begged. "It's growing cold out here." Yasuko warmly welcomed her inside and offered her a bowl of soup and the warmth of his fire. They sat together all evening talking. Her name, she said, was Naoko. Yasuko was entranced by her sweet voice, and her gentleness and beauty soon won his heart. "Please stay here with me," he asked. She looked up at him with glistening eyes and said, "I will." "Would you be my wife?" he said shyly. "I will care for you, though I am only a poor sailmaker." "Yes," she said softly, "and Yasuko, I can help you." No, you need not help me," he said. But Naoko was insistent. "A wife must help her husband as she can," she said, and though he claimed that all was well, after a while she saw how very poor he was. "Let me weave a magic sail for you," she said one night. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Ask me no questions, dear husband. Leave me with your loom tonight, but promise me one thing. You will never look at me while I am at work. Will you promise?" "I will," Yasuko said, and he swore never to break this promise. That night he went to sleep to the sound of the shuttle's click and the slide of the loom. When he woke, Naoko stood beside him holding a sail that weighed no more than a single feather, yet had the strength of a sail 50 times its weight. And when Yasuko lifted it, he heard the wind in the folds. "Naoko, you have woven the wind into the sail," he said. She smiled, and he could see that she was tired, so he put her to sleep while he ran to the harbor to sell the sail. He earned more gold than he had ever earned, and he ran home to celebrate with his beloved. Time passed, and the cranes returned to the marsh. One night, Yasuko spied his wife staring longingly down at them. "They are lovely creatures, aren't they?" he whispered, but Naoko seemed transfixed and did not speak. One day, not long afterward, a man knocked at their door. When Yasuko saw him, he recognized him as a famous sea captain, and he was amazed to see such an important man at his door. "Yasuko," said the captain, "I have seen the magic sail you made. I need to have one just like that. Make me such a sail, and I will give you enough gold to last you a lifetime. Never again will you be poor." Yasuko ran at once to Naoko, but when he told her the news, she bowed her head. "My husband, do not ask this of me," she said in a low voice. "The sail took everything from me last time. I fear what might happen to me if I make another." "But my wife," Yasuko begged, "we would have a lifetime's gold. We will never want for anything." He pleaded for so long that Naoko at last slipped behind the Sochi's screen and set to work. "Remember, you must not look," she called to him. While she worked, he paced restlessly on the deck, looking down at the ship in the harbor. One whole day passed, and finally Yasuko asked, "Naoko, are you finished yet?" When she did not answer, he continued to pace through the night. At dawn he asked again, and again she did not answer. In this way, 3 days passed. "Naoko, what are you doing?" Yasuko called out on the third day. "Do you need something?" he asked. But when he heard no answer, he could not bear the suspense any longer. Besides, he thought, if he could learn his wife's magic trick, he would not have to ask her to work. He too could weave the magic sails. He quietly tiptoed up to the screen and peered between the sliding doors. When he saw what was there, he gasped in horror. A long beak, dark black eyes. This was the face that turned to him. There stood the crane he had saved in the storm. "Naoko, stop," he cried when he saw that she was weaving her own feathers into the sail. But the black eyes filled with tears, and without a word, she raised her tattered wings. Lifting herself with difficulty, she flew out the window, disappearing into the clouds. Yasuko never saw her again, and through the long years after, he wove his sails and watched the cranes below, always waiting and hoping to hear his wife's voice once more.
Every week we experience many joys and sorrows. Every week we bring those joys and sorrows to Sunday service, so that the joys may be magnified and the sorrows made easier to bear. In a moment, I will invite you to share your joys and sorrows in the chat. Please remember that YouTube is a public forum, so if a joy or sorrow is too personal to share in detail, please type the letter I twice to represent your 2 fingers being raised, like we do in church. After this silence, I will light some spoken candles in summary. Please begin sharing your joys and concerns now. candle for those who are sick and those who care for them. Those who have died and those who grieve their absence. For those who live with fear, anxiety, or uncertainty. For those who are isolated. For those who help one another and connect across distance. For those in leadership, that they may make wise decisions. For the simple gifts that life still gives us, even in these trying times. For the victims of violence. And for all those joys and sorrows that we have left unspoken, but nevertheless hold in our hearts. We hold all these joys and sorrows in our hearts with love, and compassion, and hope, knowing that we are connected to one another in the interconnected web of existence which holds us all.
Our reflective hymn this morning is Meditation on Breathing. I hope it's a song that will remind you of the deep healing that can come from sitting in silence, focusing on your breath, as well as the deep sense of connection that can come from breathing together with others, even if those others are far apart. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in,
I breathe in peace.
When I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
When I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace.
When I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Even though we are no longer meeting in person, the work of the church continues. To keep supporting the church with your pledge, if you have online bill pay set up through your bank, you can simply add Beverly Unitarian Church, or you can mail a check to the church office. Please join with me in saying these offertory words. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
Hi BUC, it's good to see you. I miss you all. The story I'm reading today is called The Mitten, a Ukrainian folktale adapted and illustrated by Jan Brett. Once there was a boy named Nicky who wanted his new mittens made from wool as white as snow. At first, his grandmother Baba did not want to knit white mittens. If you drop one in the snow, she warned, you'll never find it. But Nicky wanted snow white mittens, and finally Baba made them. After she finished, she said, when you come home, first I will check to make sure you are safe and sound. But then I will look to see if you still have your snow white mittens. So off Nicky went, and it wasn't long until one of his new mittens dropped in the snow and was left behind. A mole, tired from tunneling along, discovered the mitten and burrowed inside. It was cozy and warm and just the right size, so he decided to stay. A snowshoe rabbit came hopping by. He stopped for a moment to admire his winter coat. It was then that he saw the mitten, and he wiggled in, feet first. The mole didn't think there was room for the both of them, so when he saw the rabbit's big kickers, he moved over. Next, a hedgehog came snuffling along. Having spent the day looking under wet leaves and for things to eat, he decided to move into the mitten and warm himself. The mole and the rabbit were bumped and jostled, but not being ones to argue with someone covered in prickles, they made room. As soon as the hedgehog disappeared into the mitten, a big owl, attracted by the commotion, swooped down. When he decided to move in also, the mole, the rabbit, and the hedgehog grumbled. But when they saw the owl's glinty talons, they quickly let him in. Up through the snow appeared a badger. He eyed the mitten and began to climb in. The mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, and the owl were not pleased. There was no room left, but when they saw his diggers, they gave him the thumb. It started snowing, but the animals were snug in the mitten. A waft of warm steam rose in the air, and a fox trotting by stopped to investigate. Just the sight of the cozy mitten made him feel drowsy. The fox poked his muzzle in. When the mole, the rabbit, the hedgehog, the owl, and the badger saw his shiny teeth, they gave the fox lots of room. When a great bear lumbered by, he spied the mitten all plumped up. Not being one to be left out in the cold, he began to nose his way in. The animals were packed in as tightly as could be, but what animal would argue with a bear? The mitten swelled and stretched. It was pulled and bulged to many times its size, but Baba's good knitting held fast. Along came a meadow mouse, no bigger than an acorn. She wiggled onto the one space left, and she made herself comfortable on top of the great bear's nose. The bear, tickled by the mouse's whiskers, gave an enormous sneeze. Ah, 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 ka-choo! The force of the sneeze shot the mitten up into the sky and scattered the animals in all directions. On his way home, Nicky saw a white shape in the distance. It was the lost mitten silhouetted against the blue sky. As he ran to catch his snow-white mitten, he saw Baba's face in the window. First, she looked to see if he was safe and sound, and then she saw that he still had his new mittens. Be well, friends.
Paper Bag Princess by Robert Munch. Elizabeth was a beautiful princess. She lived in a castle and had expensive princess clothes. She was going to marry a prince named Ronald. Unfortunately, a dragon smashed her castle, burned all her clothes with his fiery breath, and carried off Prince Ronald. Elizabeth decided to chase the dragon and get Ronald back. She looked everywhere for something to wear, but the only thing she could find that was not burnt was a paper bag. She put on her paper bag and followed the dragon. He was easy to follow because he left a trail of burnt forest and horse bones. Finally, Elizabeth came to a cave with a large door that had a huge knocker on it. She took hold of the knocker and banged on the door. The dragon stuck out his nose and said, "Well, a princess. I love to eat princesses, but I've already eaten a whole castle today. I am a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." He slammed the door so fast that Elizabeth almost got her nose caught. Elizabeth grabbed the knocker and banged on the door again.
The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Go away! I love to eat princesses, but I have already eaten a whole castle today. I am a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." "Wait!" shouted Elizabeth. "Is it true that you are the smartest and fiercest dragon in the whole world?" "Yes," said the dragon. "Is it true," said Elizabeth, "that you can burn up 10 forests with fiery breath?" "Oh, yes," said the dragon, and he took a huge, deep breath and breathed out so much fire that he burnt up 50 forests. "Fantastic," said Elizabeth, and the dragon took another huge breath and breathed out so much fire that he burnt up 100 forests. "Magnificent," said Elizabeth, and the dragon took another huge breath, but this time nothing came out. The dragon didn't even have enough fire left to cook a meatball. Elizabeth said, "Dragon, is it true that you can fly around the world in just 10 seconds?" "Why, yes," said the dragon, and jumped up and flew away all the way around the world in just 10 seconds. He was very tired when he got back, but Elizabeth shouted, "Fantastic! Do it again!" So the dragon jumped up and flew around the whole world in just 20 seconds. When he got back, he was too tired to talk, and he lay down and went straight to sleep. Elizabeth whispered very softly, "Hey, dragon." The dragon didn't move at all. She lifted up the dragon's ear and put her head right inside. She shouted as loud as she could, "Hey, dragon!" The dragon was so tired he didn't even move. Elizabeth walked right over the dragon and opened the door to the cave. There was Prince Ronald. He looked at her and said, "Elizabeth, you are a mess. You smell like ashes. Your hair is all tangled, and you are wearing a dirty old paper bag. Come back when you are dressed like a princess." "Ronald," said Elizabeth, "your clothes are really pretty, and your hair is very neat. You look like a real prince, but you are a bum. They didn't get married after all."
Our stories have concluded. I hope they have given you something to laugh about, something to ponder, something to learn from, or something to inspire you, or maybe all of the above. As we prepare to part ways for the week ahead, let us say together in unison the words for extinguishing the chalice. The flame is extinguished, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis, or the love we share in all the world.
Our final song hardly needs any introduction because it's the song that we use to sing our children out to the religious education classes every week. This week, though, we use it to sing one another on our way as we leave this service, wherever we may go physically or emotionally this week.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you.
May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere. Surround you everywhere, everywhere. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere.